Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 3 of the anime series Dance with Devils. And this one got actually pretty intense in places, still very much embodying that like stage play production feel and that gothic horror feel, is keeping me attuned to this series. And I'm absolutely captivated by the fact, of course, as we saw toward the tail end of the previous episode, Ritsuka's brother has effectively returned, and certain aspects of his character, I mean, from right off the bat, we're seeing it's like hands off with the Rem guy. He immediately distrusts him, and I do still wonder if he has more of an awareness of what's going on than he's letting sort of be in evidence, at least for Ritsuka herself. He's kind of telling her when they get home, take a day off, you don't have to go to school, stay within the confines of this house, do not leave the house, and very much in a similar means to how I referred to in the first episode when we saw Ritsuka's mother sort of being very superstitious and having these markings meant to be protectoral markings, to keep a sort of safe boundary outside the house so demons and vampires and such couldn't find their way in. Are we seeing, Lindo, her brother, going and putting holy water out at the front gate and even, sprinkling it on her and on the table and on the food and everything so it can be mostly protected from these demonic forces and all these sort of nefarious, means and machinations that are unfolding with everyone seeking the grimoire. As we see in this episode, as Rem sort of peeved goes back to the third library, answering one of my questions, were they all sort of a posse, were they all working together, or were they all sort of competing against each other? We see full force that, at least with Yuri, the character, the sort of botanist of the group, he has roses and everything. He tries to tempt Ritsuka when they first have their encounter with a flower and all this kind of stuff. And each of these guys have almost that classic horror vampire thing where they have these mystical, magical eyes. They can lure you in and hypnotize you, and that's what Yuri's sort of main power is. Of course, it kind of comes out of nowhere. The brother takes off. He's going to do something surreptitiously. And Ritsuka's friend, for all intents and purposes, is supposed to be coming over. And I feel really bad for Asuna, her friend, because this is like the 5th time where she leaves her hanging. Oh, I found something out about my mother. I'm going to go check it out. You can't come over. We can't hang out. This girl is unfortunately being left by the wayside time and time again. And she's just trying to protect her friend. Now, I would absolutely laugh my ass off if it turns out she's kind of like, one of these nefarious machination types as well, undercover or something, and all this time we're thinking, oh, she's the imposed upon friend, and then all of a sudden she turns face and we find out she was just as malevolent as all these other forces. But I think for the moment, it's more I just feel for her character because she wants to be there for Ritsuka. She's worried about her with the mother going missing and everything like that. And the brother just comes back and he's like making her food and he's like cooking and all this other stuff. And there's more going on there. So like out of nowhere, just kind of like it shook me and threw me for a loop, took me aback when you hear this like car squealing and like a woman scream. And I'm like, oh my God, is that her friend? She was coming over. And it turns out to all be a ruse because of Yuri. We see that both he and Rem are going back and forth looking at this almost Chinese chess or whatever it is on his desk in the third library. And Yuri's going to move a piece and Rem's like scolding him. No, you don't go out of turn. They're basically, I think, sort of talking about who's going to make a move on Ritsuka and try to find this forbidden grimoire and everything next. Who's next in line to make a move. And Rem is still very much, it's my turf. My move is still ongoing, so back off. And we see that Ori does not back off at all. He kind of like just shows up on the scene after we hear this, what seems to be a car accident, and bold-faced lies to Ritsuka, who comes, of course, like an idiot out into the road, leaves the house, the safety and the confines of the house, and immediately he's like, well, we have news about your mother. The president has news. Rem has news. And of course she hears this and she leaves with bated breath. She does stop long enough to leave that message to Asuna and be like, sorry, I'm busy, I gotta go, you know. But of course he brings her back to this giant sort of indoor terrarium kind of situation, which it kind of reminded me of a couple of things I've seen before in other anime series. You know, Riddle's Story of Devil, there was like a sort of indoor terrarium kind of scenario, and in the third part of the 3-part OVA, I think it's Alice in Borderland, something along those lines, where it's just, that's crazy in and of itself, involved an indoor sort of terrarium like this, you know, with all the plant life and everything. And it's interesting to see a character like Ori who is, for all intents and purposes, he has those vampire demonic aesthetics, you know, but at the same time, and even with a class of like these brainwashed sort of vampire girls, once again you're seeing these markings on the backs of the necks of the servant type, you know, figures surrounding these guys. Rem had like the sort of limousine driver has the mark on him. Another servant we saw, if that's not the same guy. And all these girls seem to have these marks, like they're being mind controlled and sort of brainwashed. And it's almost like it very much, you know, Yuri's character heavily reminds me of like the Bela Lugosi Dracula, the classic Dracula. In that, while not being a vampire necessarily, he has that hypnotic eye entrancing thing. He's got all these girls wearing their masks, and very much like, you know, the sirens, the vampiric sirens, going back to that classic, you know, horror film. That's kind of like what we have with all these girls in this environment, and they're all jealous, they're all gunning for Ritsuka, wondering what makes her so special and all this stuff. And it just gets intense when his sort of music quotient, you know, at one point we do see sort of Ritsuka on her own, and she starts singing that melody. I think it's the same melody as the first episode that she sings, to sort of get us in touch with her character. And I like that we had a little bit of a reprise of that in this, to just bring home the emotions she's feeling, the frustration, the sadness, missing her mother, and all that kind of stuff. We see, you know, this sort of interposed with flashbacks of her mother. And in this particular case, where it's Yuri's song, it kind of has a tango vibe to it. And I love almost like the scenes played out reminded me of like the opening scenes of Kingdom Hearts, where you have these almost stained glass window floor designs that you're standing atop and everything, and seeing her sort of with the butterfly wings, and the whole meaning of what the butterflies is to Yuri, as we see he kills one, and it's about dominance and domination, you know, basically having all these girls mind warped into his control and power. And now we have Ritsuka, who is like the utmost, the pinnacle of what he has his sights set on. It's not just about looking for the Forbidden Grimoire at that point anymore. He wants Ritsuka herself, you know, this very tempting piece, this fixture that all of these guys in the Third Library specifically, and especially Rem, is going to be gunning after, whether they want the grimoire or not. That seems to be the impetus behind why they're even setting their sights on her to begin with. But it seems to be going beyond that, you know, sort of what I was talking about as a precursor to this series, knowing that it would be like all these guys would be sort of trying to romance her and everything. But I love that gothic horror flavor to it. It makes me much more invested than this just being a strict out-and-out romantic kind of, you know, ridiculous series. I love that sort of edge that it has. And we see once again her pendant that her mother gave her emits this energy, and this is what keeps her from becoming, you know, lured in completely. At one point, she's almost, you know, when the whole place like changes into like a fairground and all these rides and a house of mirrors, it becomes very unnerving, very sort of, you know, disconcerting to see her, you know, suddenly like on the run, and all these brainwashed girls are trying to attack her. At one point they're trying to rip the pendant off of her and everything, and of course Yuri comes in as pseudo savior, which calls back that similar flavor with Rem and those vampires in episode 1. I was left speculating, was he really saving her? Was this something, some grand design of his where he sicked these vampires on her and then conveniently he comes in? Well, that's exactly what's going on with Yuri. He's sicked these brainwashed vampiric girls on Ritsuka to chase her down, and then suddenly he shows up as the savior. Take my hand, I'll protect you. And he almost convinces her with that brainwashing hypnotic effect to take that pendant off. and I was like practically like yelling at my mobile screen, "Don't take it off! Don't fall for it!" And right at that moment, because we saw that Rem had gotten wind of what Yuri was doing, even though he was scolded and told not to, Yuri took it upon himself to make his move on Ritsuka, and Rem was, for all intents and purposes, pissed. He shows up right in the nick of time, saves Ritsuka for all intents and purposes, who then, spirits away, scurries off. She's then, she walks headlong into her brother. And the immediate thought I had, thank goodness she's not an idiot. This character's not stupid. She is thinking the exact thing I'm thinking and asking out loud, watching my screen like, yeah, it's going to answer me back. I'm like, how the hell did he know where she was? She didn't leave him a message, unless maybe there was something off screen where Azuna had run into the brother and, pieced it together where she was likely to have gone or whatever like that. It's just very intriguing that the brother showed up at the right place at the right time. And of course, she sounds like a babbling idiot because she's talking about this fairground sort of theme park that she just came from. And you just see the top glass through trees of that indoor terrarium place. So he's like, "Would you fall asleep? What were you dreaming? What's going on? You've been under a lot of stress since mom disappeared and all this stuff." And I think the chief thing we're left with the dialogue between Ritsuka and Yuri is his promise that the brothers, it plays into that line of him knowing more about the scenario, what's going on, because he tells her that he's got this big secret, and apparently that secret is he is off in Europe, or was off in Europe, not just to go to school, not just to go to college or whatever it is, university, that kind of thing. There's actually another reason, and it plays into this superstitious, supernatural thing. He's studying to become an exorcist. Kind of made me think of Blue Exorcist, actually. And with the holy water sprinkling that around, he's definitely more attuned to the sort of overarching ramifications of everything that's unfolding. And one thing as a footnote I also want to add is a great sort of suggestion from somebody in the comments on the last episode was, I was speculating, what is this grimoire? What does it represent? We know it's supposed to be like a book of magic, that kind of thing. But they put forth this idea, which I find absolutely mind-bendingly captivating. What if Ritsuka herself is this grimoire of some means, Like, what if that magic, what if those concoctions, what if whatever, that means, whatever that power is somehow contained within her. And maybe even I also put forth the fact that because she has this pendant, and it's a protectoral, sort of pendant, keeping people away, so they can't maybe tap into and awaken whatever that is that exists within her, that kind of thing. That, to me, it's mind-blowing if that'll turn out to be the case. I would love to see it go that route, because then all of a sudden you would think her own life would be in jeopardy. It wouldn't just be all these guys vying for a material possession that could, give them utmost power. It would be the girl. It would be the life of the girl suddenly at risk and at stake. And I almost have to suspect the way Rem, the way Yuri called him on the fact that Rem has been feeling for Ritsuka and going out of his way, calling her by name and everything, going out of his way to protect her, is he fallen for her? Is he maybe going to be like the one out of all these guys who starts out sort of malevolent and with his own machinations, but then turns and is there to protect her and actually will risk himself to see to her well-being? It could go any number of ways. And, it's just very interesting. I can't wait to see if there is a confrontation between Ritsuka and her brother Lindo and, trying to piece together the details of this stuff. I hope she actually finally is there for her friend at some point and they can powwow and hang out and, everything will be kosher with that. If it's not falling in line with my just sort of hilarious, speculation that maybe Yazuna is a little more than we assume as well. You can't take any of that stuff for granted in a series like this. They could throw any kinds of twists and turns they want into the mix. And I'm enjoying it so much, much more than I ever would have anticipated. And I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below. If you've seen episode 3 of Dance with Devils, if you enjoyed it as much as I did, if not, why not? Let me know in the comments below. Are you still enjoying the musical sequences, for those of you who said, you know, watching it and enjoying it like I am? And if not, why not? You know, anything goes in the comments below. We can agree to disagree. I'd love to hear your own POV, even if it doesn't fall in line with mine. Just having the conversation about great shows like this is what it's all about. So yeah, otherwise that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.